A few weeks back, I built this console, and it had a bunch of little problems that led me into labeling it a failure. Well, today I'm going to redeem myself. Or at least try to. On 4eyes. So if I'm going to redeem myself, I guess I have to start by determining what exactly made the original piece suck. And I've thought a lot about it, and if I were to boil it down to the root suckiness, it's the fit and finish of certain things that just weren't up to snuff. Now, I'm going to get into all of that shortly, but let's start off with the tallest order of business, which is making this thing shorter. So we're going to change out this original base for something that's a lot lower and more subtle. Oh, and I guess I should mention that the reason we're doing this is because this piece is going to be repurposed as a TV stand, and this is going to make for a much more comfortable viewing angle. I started off on the computer roughing out a couple ideas. There were a few ways that I could go, but ultimately landed on this one because I really liked the subtlety and the gentle nods to some of the other design elements, like the 45-degree angled doors. Out in the garage, I started by milling my pieces down to right around 1.5 inches thick. Next, I took my pieces over to the table saw and ripped them into 4 strips at 1.5 inches wide each. Then before doing anything else, I made a bunch of random marks on the pieces so that I could keep them in order. And the reason for that is, after these legs come back together, I wanted to look like it came from one piece. Actually, let's cut to a drawing. So basically when I thought about making these legs, the most obvious approach would have been to just take a piece that was 3 inches wide and cut out this little section, and that would have been that. And that's all fine and dandy, but in my personal experience, I never get these corners that clean when I make them this way. Or I should say, it ends up taking me longer sanding things than I think this other approach is going to take me altogether. So that approach is to instead make each leg out of 3 pieces. 1 long strip and 2 little feet that result in the same shape. So that was the reason for those little random markings in the last shot. Basically, they're going to ensure that the little feet come from a part of the wood that's going to make for a continuous looking grain, as if it had been cut from one piece. Next, I took my strips over to the table saw and used my crosscut sled to bring them down to what'll roughly be their finished length. I'm still going to make one more cut that you'll see in a minute that's going to finalize them, but this is getting them pretty close. And after that was done, I could start marking out where exactly I'd get the feet from. These numbers that you see in this shot are just to help me keep track of everything. So once I was certain that I had everything right, I got out my miter gauge and made a cut at 45 degrees for the insides of the leg. And then I glued them back together. And here you can see the continuous grain look that I was going for, and what all those little marks were for. Later that day, after the feet had some time to cure, I tilted my blade to 45 degrees and back beveled each end of the 4 legs so that there will be miter joints where they all meet in the corners. The only real trick here was that half had to be cut with the top against the gauge's fence and half with the bottom against it. And for those with the bottom against it, I used a little spacer scrap to keep everything straight. Finally, I set up a scrap fence and just barely raised my blade into it so that I could cut this little detail onto the tops of all the pieces. And after we finish this, we're going to jump back in time to fix a few of the main problems that my failure piece had. But first, let me attach the base. And actually, hold up. Why is everything so blurry in this shot? You know what? I think you might need glasses. Maybe you should check out Warby Parker. No, but seriously. Warby Parker has been a dream sponsor of mine for some time. Not only are my current glasses from Warby Parker, but I've been getting my glasses there for the past 5 years, way before I was ever on YouTube. And there's a few reasons for that. First and foremost, I really like the style that they offer. Also, they're surprisingly affordable, starting at just $95, which includes your prescription lenses and things that normally cost extra like anti-glare and anti-scratch coatings. Next, if you're lazy or busy like me, you can head over to their website, take a quick quiz, and have Warby Parker recommend glasses that match your face shape and style. Then choose up to 5 pairs for their free home try-on program. The pairs you pick will be sent to your home for you to try on, and there's no obligation to buy, and shipping is free both ways. And actually, if you have an iPhone 10, you don't even have to take the quiz, because you can download the Warby Parker app and use the Find Your Fit feature, which utilizes the iPhone's true depth cameras to map your facial features and makes recommendations in just seconds. Just visit warbyparker.com/4eyes on your phone, or click the link in the description and you'll see a link to grab the app. So here are the 5 frames that I selected for my free home try-on. I'm leaning a certain way, but I'll make you guys a deal. Comment below on which number you think I should pick, and if this video gets to, let's say, 5,000 likes, those will be my new glasses. Deal? Cool. So honestly, I can't recommend Warby Parker highly enough. If you wear glasses, you really need to check them out. And even if you don't, they make prescription and non-prescription sunglasses too. So there's something for everybody. And right now, you got nothing to lose by getting a free home try-on at warbyparker.com/4eyes. I'll throw a link down in the description, but again, that's warbyparker.com/4eyes. So check them out, and not only will you look better, but you'll see better too. And you'll be helping others to see better, since for every pair of glasses Warby Parker sells, they distribute a pair to someone in need through their Buy a Pair, Give a Pair program. Alright, thanks Warby Parker. Now let's get back to it. Okay, so the new base is definitely going to help a lot with the next problem we need to fix, but I still want to go a step further anyhow, plus it's pretty easy. If you look at the way that these doors are designed, this one in particular, it creates a really uneven amount of pressure on the hardware. And I had originally used soft close door slides, which if you've ever used them, you know that that first inch or so of travel when opening them is extra hard. It doesn't really start sliding freely until it unlatches. So that, coupled with the tall legs, made for a really wobbly console. And it also caused the drawer to, rack or something, so that the soft close function didn't even really work. So let's get rid of it. Alright, so first things first, I'm going to remove the hardware from the cabinet. And I'm sure every company's slides are probably slightly different, but I'm sure they're all reasonably close. But anyhow, now that we have it out, I'm going to start by depressing these 2 little tabs and release the whole mechanism. Since they both have to be depressed at once, I found that a pair of paint can openers worked really well. Once you've done that, the whole mechanism just slides right out. Now technically you could stop here and the problem would be solved, but now there's nothing to stop the drawer from sliding in deeper than where the drawer fronts would be flush with the cabinet. So we're going to have to go a bit further. Next we're going to remove this little spring and set it aside. Then we'll remove this piston and set it aside. After that, you can separate the mechanism into 2 pieces and get rid of the little latch that normally would engage and release the other half of the drawer to make it start soft closing. And then you can put the 2 pieces back together. Finally, slide the whole thing back in until the 2 tabs click again, and you're done. It's already working way better even with the tall legs, and with the new base, it's perfect. The doors aren't really a huge problem, but they could still be better. But anyhow, the main problem is that because of the way that the handle works, they became needlessly thick. Couple that with the fact that they're actually pretty long at about 26 inches, and you have a heavy door with lots of leverage on the hinge side. If I could do the impossible, like share and turn back time, I'd totally redesign these things, but I can't, so instead I'm going to try my best to fix them. First things first, since this thing is going to be a TV stand, we're going to want some space for components. So let's lose one door altogether so that we can use it as a cubby. The first thing that I did to make that happen was remove the door hardware. Then I took a piece of scrap walnut and made a few plugs. Went back into the carcass and drilled out some holes. Then I filled them in, let them dry, and cut them flush. Next, over at the bandsaw, I cut a few little spacer blocks out of walnut that are going to sit under a shelf that I'm going to install. This isn't the most ideal solution, but since I can't take everything apart, it'll work well enough. Then while I was letting those set up, I put a small cable management hole in the back panel. I think this will probably be enough, but if more needed, I can always drill them later. After that, I cut my shelf to size, put some hardwood edging on it, and installed it. For the remaining door, I wanted to see how well I could lighten it up. Since these doors really only need to be thick in a few places, the best solution at this point seemed like just removing a bunch of material. Basically hollowing out as much of the back as I could. Now I could do this entire thing on my CNC, but it would take a really long time, so instead I started off over at the drill press and removed about 90% of the material that way. Then over at the CNC, I cut the perimeter out nice and clean and got rid of the center section that the drill press couldn't reach, and finally chiseled out a few extra bits. You know, the first time around when I built this as a record player and failed, I really learned a lot from it. I'm not going to rehash that here, as I've already covered the lessons I walked away with in that video. But over the course of this project, I think I learned some pretty valuable things too. And chief among them would be this. Sometimes life presents you with hurdles, but very few, if any of them, are incapable of being cleared. And I guess in a way, these two projects are kind of a metaphor for life. So if you're dealt a bad hand, or living in a wobbly, saggy-doored, sticky-drawered reality, you don't have to accept it. Because if you work hard, and you want it bad enough, and you give it everything you've got, eventually, you can turn that faulty record player into a pretty average TV stand. Now, if that doesn't motivate you, I don't know what will. Special thanks to James Lucchesi, Philip Jeffs, Craig Salisbury, Martin Ostream, Mick Wotherston, and the rest of my Patreon members for making these videos possible. I just ordered a bunch of new shirts, so yours should be arriving soon if you haven't gotten them already. And as always, thank you for everything. Truly. And if you want to support the show too, check out the Patreon link in the description and see if it's right for you. And as always, no pressure. Alright, thanks for watching. See you next time.